basically, other books looked at what the civil rights movement did, how they changed the country. My book is different in that it looks at how the civil rights movement did what it did. That is, on a day-to-day basis, how they proceeded, what tactics, techniques, and procedures they used to bring together social power and change America to make it more of a democracy between 1954 and 1968. The theme of the book is that they were, yes, they were nonviolent, but they were not passive. It's a common mistake that people make to think they kind of said, okay, bop us on the head. We don't care. We won't do anything. In fact, what the civil rights movement practiced was confrontational nonviolence. What they were saying was essentially, yeah, you can bop us on the head, but I'll be back again tomorrow with a friend. And if you bop us on the head, both of us on the head tomorrow, there's going to be 3 of us and 4 of us. And ultimately, you're going to pay cost that you can only dream of, that you can't even imagine how much this is going to cost you. For example, the Birmingham movement in the spring of 1963. The people of Birmingham, the city fathers, the white power structure, basically tried to ignore the civil rights movement. And the civil rights movement said, this is going to cost the city of Birmingham. So the theme of the book is again and again to look at what they did, how they did it. And the core of it is about the discipline, the dedication, the care they put in to what they did. One of the great trainers of the civil rights movement, James Lawson in Nashville, once said that the test of a movement is not whether you can put on a demonstration, it's whether you can do it again tomorrow. That's what the other side, the white power structure, feared, your ability to sustain the movement. So the Montgomery bus boycott, the first great action I look at, the strength of the boycott, which boycotting the city bus system in Montgomery, the capital of Alabama, in 1954 and 1955, the great strength of that was that they maintained it, they sustained it for over a year. They did not take the city buses. They set up alternative transportation routes. So sustainability, how do you achieve that, is the first theme I look at. The second theme I look at is training. In Nashville with Lawson, the guy I just mentioned, Nashville is where a lot of the cadre that runs the civil rights movement comes out of. People like Diane Nash, John Lewis, James Bevel, and more and more. I like the cover of my paperback book because it shows Diane Nash and a couple of other of these people who really were at the core of the movement of things like the Freedom Rides, which the Nashville students helped sustain and become a national phenomena. The Freedom Rides in military terms were basically a raid into enemy territory, showing that we could be anywhere we want to be and you can't stop us. Another great shock to the predominant caste system that prevailed in the South at that time. So again and again, I look at what happened in each of these cities, how the movement was put together, why it worked, how it worked, and occasionally it didn't work. And I think there are lessons yet to be learned from the classic civil rights movement. The centrality of discipline, training, and most of all, preparation. Thinking about what you're trying to do, defining who you are as the first active strategy. Diane Nash in Nashville, who really was a central thinker in the early civil rights movement, 20-year-old Black woman out of college, she said the first step in all this is to define who you are. Her self-definition is, we are people who will no longer tolerate segregation. Once you know who you are, that begins defining your strategy. Diane Nash said, we're not going to live with segregation. What does that mean? It means we're going to walk down to the segregated lunch counter and order lunch. Well, people will attack you. Yeah, we got it. We're ordering lunch because we're people who don't live with that. And guess what? A couple of years later, they were right. There wasn't that segregation. Later on, Diane Nash, in a tragic moment, is overwhelmingly sad about the bombing of the Birmingham church in September 1963. 4 young Black girls are murdered, blown up. Many others are wounded. The church is devastated. The community is wounded. And Diane Nash's first reaction was, forget about this nonviolence. We could go find the killer. We could figure out who it is and get him, the bomber. But she calms down. She thinks about it. And she says, you know what we're going to do? We're going to shut down Montgomery, the capital of Alabama and the capital of the Confederacy. And she actually proposes this to Martin Luther King Jr. And he says, oh, Diane, I'm busy. Let's not talk about this foolishness. She sticks with it. She's a very determined person. And guess what? 2 years later, she, her husband, James Bevel, and King, and the Civil Rights Movement shut down Montgomery, Alabama. How'd they do it? They marched from Selma to Montgomery. They went into that city, the capital of Alabama, and it stopped business because they were there. The governor pulled the curtain shut and nobody answered the phone in the governor's mansion. So Diane Nash, having defined who she was, carried out magnificent nation-changing actions once she achieved that understanding. So I think that's the first lesson. Figure out who you are. That tells you what you want to do, what your strategy is. Once you have your strategy, you have to figure out your tactics. What things will lead to that outcome we want? And what they found was that training was enormously important. You just don't ask people to show up at a demonstration. You train them for the actions you want at a demonstration. So what Nash and Bevel and these people in the middle of the movement did was figure out how to change the national agenda and keep on pushing. All the things they did, preparation, thinking, training, recruiting, all these things made the movement sustainable. As I quoted James Lawson before, the test of a demonstration is the ability to do it again tomorrow. They had the ability to do it again tomorrow. They demonstrated this to the white power structure, and that's when things began to change. When white businessmen in the South said, holy moly, these people are going to keep on doing this, that's when the business structure split from the political structure. The business structure said, we need to change things. The political structure didn't. Once you divide the opposition, you're halfway to victory. All of this, I think, is intimately related to where we are today in ways both good and bad. My overall assessment is that white supremacism is still in this country, but it is a declining force. The numbers go down, but they're still there. They're still out there. They still are a force to be reckoned with. So there's reason to continue the struggle. One thing that struck me about this book is that it has not been a bestseller. It has sold not as well as any of my other books, yet it has resonated with the Black church. I was invited to speak to a group of 50 Black Baptist ministers in Washington, D.C. One of them told me that they're studying it in his Bible class because there are so many biblical analogies to study and actually quotes from the Bible that people use. That, for example, Martin Luther King Jr. used, quoting from Amos. That's been a surprise to me. This book has been different for me. It has, though, really reached into parts of America that I hope to reach, and that's been a genuine reward.